Welcome everyone to Module 6 of the podcast course. It's been a little while since I did this. I could tell my hair's growing and stuff, but I'm suited up somewhat again. So we're here to talk about building your audience and how to do that. So this is going to be two parts. I'm going to talk about the organic things you need to do in order to keep your audience, to build your audience, keep your audience, and things that could help you that you may not expect. And then I'm going to take you to some places that maybe you have never thought about to go to build, and why you should consider these things. Then we're going to talk about ads, because ads is something that should be discussed as well. Again, this isn't a one size fits all kind of thing, because every podcast is a little bit different. But I'm going to tell you what's worked, why it worked. Each of my shows, I can kind of tell you about each of them and why and what they did and how they did, and that's what I'm going to talk about here. So Just Joshing was my first show. It's still my longest running show. I just released 1042 last weekend. 1043 is legitimately dropping tonight, which is kind of crazy when you sit there and think about that. Done some pretty cool stuff I'm proud of. But I'm going to tell you how each show worked, why it worked, and what I did and didn't do in each of those. So with Just Joshing, when it started, it was one episode a week, 30 minutes to an hour. It went to eventually two, then to three, to four. Currently, it's at 2 a week. My most growth was when I was doing 3 episodes a week. At this moment in time, I'm kind of taking a minute pause because of with what I want to do next. I'm trying to figure out some things and blah, blah, blah. But right now I'm doing 2 episodes a week that regularly being released. So that is the basic numbers there on how to do this. So let me tell you what worked, why it did work, why my numbers are where they are right now, so on and so forth. So the first thing is the things I did to ensure that the show had the best chance to succeed is I released my show at the same time every time. Right now I'm releasing it Tuesday and Saturdays. When it was a 3 a week, it'd be Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday, or Monday, Wednesday, Saturday. It was something like that when I did it. And the thing about it is I was always consistent. And this is a huge thing about podcasts in general. You release your show as consistently as you can. That's just the reality. That's one of the biggest things. The whole goal is you want to get on someone's subscriber list as a show to listen to. Now, regardless of what your show is, or whether you're watch listen, you want to get on someone's subscription list. The reason you want to get on someone's subscription list is you can actually at that point then regularly release content for them and do it in a way that they are following you and everything you're doing. And primarily it is my audio. I do an audio show with Just Joshing, so Podomatic is where I regularly update. I do update occasionally on YouTube, and obviously you can listen to me live on Twitch, and we'll talk about some of the concurrent things. Now, if you notice, I'm doing this in multiple different places. I'm not just doing this in one thing. I'm doing this in a whole bunch of places, and it's to widen the net. And I'm going to show you guys in the next module, the odds and ends, how to get your podcast in Apple, iTunes, all those places. But this is the fundamental building blocks to building your audience. And the thing is, whatever platform you choose, whether it's Podbean, Podomatic, whatever one you choose, you release your stuff consistently. If you're saying you're one a week, you're one a week. If you have now you can give yourself built-in breaks, but then you make them seasons. Make a season 1, a season 2, a season 3, and you try to be as consistent as possible. My third show, Healing Hands, not entirely like circumstances beyond control, but one of the struggles I had with my client with Healing Hands was regularly being able to launch. It wasn't really from my end, it was from theirs. And again, I'm not blaming them. There was definitely some things beyond their control as well. But that's one of the challenges. When you're trying to build a presence online, you have to be there all the time. When you say you're going to be there all the time, because if you start becoming erratic, do it enough, people will listen to something else or watch something else, and they will forget about you. It happens. I take a regularly the weeks of Christmas off. The reason why is because Christmas is the one time of year no one listens to anything really. Like you might get some stuff in the New Year's, like I get some little residual stuff, but Christmas is the worst time to release content. period, unless it's very specified content. So outside of that, I'm regular with the show twice a week. So this year you're going to see 100 episodes released on the podcast. If I decide to go a little farther, what I did when I went to 4, I did as many as 200 in a year. Uh, I'm comfortable with 100 right now. Eventually, I'm going to go somewhere between 50 and 100 when I'm more on the road, doing this more often on the road. That's a deliberate design. But when I do that, it's going to be a gradual transition. And I'm talking about just Josh here in particular because this is the nature of this show. Also, for this show, my guests help. I'm going to be very honest. Like, it's not just me putting the word out there; it's my guest. My guests are the ones telling their friends in their newsletters and in their like on their social feeds. Hey, I got interviewed here. You want to check me out? Go check me out. All this stuff adds up. I've generally made a very good impression with my show, with people on the show. I've had one person in my entire time of doing this, maybe two, that hated coming on the show, which I consider a really good batting average. So your guest can help you do that. This is why, like I said, guesting really works. That's one of the big advantages to having shows with guests on there. They will spread the word for you as well. But the other big organic thing, other than consistency, that is also just going out there and doing different things with your show. That's why sometimes you need to break the formula. You're trying and you're being creative, try to draw new people in every so often. These are things you can do to constantly try things. And I think the one, again, part of the success of my show is the show has been around forever. I've done it, I've delivered, and have delivered consistently for a very, very, very long time. So people know I'm there. And there's a certain reliability. Now I've done it for so long. I'm actually contemplating taking a break so that kind of, because again, there's in my particular case, there's a danger maybe being taken for granted. So I have to I'm balancing that kind of all the time. But I also realize when I get to May, I have to do a shift. Like that's just something I'm more consciously aware of. But I've been doing this for like 8 years. I've done this. I've been fairly regular with my content. My content's consistently the time it is. It's evolved, but it's never been one thing. And when you actually are looking at something that's when you're looking at something that's a as long running as my show, these are things you're thinking about. The immigration show was different. My consultant.ca show actually did bigger numbers, but it did so for some very specific reasons. The first is it is a tailor made to a very specific audience. We knew going into this show that we were trying to we had a very specific goal of hitting immigrants coming to Canada. And because we were hitting immigrants coming to Canada, a lot of decisions when me and Sarah were putting the show together were with that in mind, right? It wasn't just like, hey, we're just going to put random stuff out. No, no, no. We're trying to make people feel a very specific way. And one of my jobs when I was working on the show was I was doing the SEO for the show. So every episode I would be researching tags. YouTube is part of Google, and Google there is such a thing as search engine optimization. So your tags can actually can apply here. My tags can also apply with my stuff as well. And so what ends up happening is people are looking for the specified information, whether it's a PDP draw, which was a regular thing, like draws for getting people to automatically that chance to become a Canadian citizen. That was a big part of what we did. That was something that people came to see. But we also created content that was specified just about Canada. And I would tailor the SEO tags with that content in mind so we could reach even some people here. Now, the audience spoke for itself. The audience was not from Canada really, but then again, that was our goal. Our goal was not to necessarily attract the Canadian audience, but the audience trying to come to Canada. And the show did a phenomenal job for the time I was there in doing just that. Considering our production limitations, I think the thing I'm really happy with is on average, by the time when I left, I had 13 to 16,000 people watching our show once a week, every Thursday when it came up all the time. Until I left. I can hold that head. Like I drew 16,000 people to watch my show, which is kind of cool. Healing Hands is also got that kind of going for it. Is that we're hitting a very specific target, but the target we're hitting is a combination of both students and potential clients for the client. So the show is tailored to show what she can do. She is teaching the audience a little bit about how massage therapy works. She's showing off her techniques. She's explaining her techniques. And you hear me asking questions and answers just because I'm playing the role of both director and student. Based on the explanation she's given me, I'm asking questions accordingly. That's a big thing. Like these are all the organic things that make the show work. Um, those are the people we're trying to reach. And up until considering my client had no presence, 129 views on our last episode may not seem like a lot, but when we started at 0, that's doing pretty good. And I can't wait to actually get back and finish the show. Like rebuilding that momentum all over again, but also just, creating the show, regularly releasing the show, doing clips for the show. So which leads to the other thing, clips. Clips do help. So I got this technique from Twitch is we would take a piece of the episode, like 30 seconds to a minute of the show, and we would highlight it because of TikTok, because of Twitch, because of some of those things, right? You can put those clips on your YouTube channel, your Instagram, your TikTok, and show people what you're doing and give people a link to chase you down and join in on your conversation. I think those are one of the smartest, most interesting ways to advertise your show regularly is showing people what you can do. And I think that's a really cool thing. TikTok also has a really interesting thing is that as you change things up, you actually strike more people. I've been experimenting with the algorithms a little bit. And one of the things I found is when I skip back away and then put something brand new, I hit new numbers, which is kind of neat. Lastly, there's social media. The social media, a place not often talked about to reach people, but is a very good way if you want to look for specified groups is Discord. Discord is probably the best social media on the board. It uses lots of these bulletin boards where people discuss things. It's a very gamer centric culture, but that was one of the reasons why I chose Twitch too, because Twitch, finding loyal people to your product, video game people are probably the most loyal. Like gamers in general are very loyal to their products. So I deliberately chose Twitch as an operation. Although I didn't get the results I hoped for, indirectly, it helped grow my channel in other places. So these are the things that I found worked for me. So if I were to put this down like with you, okay, first off, be consistent. More than anything else, that's going to get you somewhere. 2, put it out, spread as wide a field as you're comfortable doing. Making some conscious choices in your social media about what you're doing, showcasing people what you can do. Coming up with some creative campaigns is a good way. But 2, figure out who your show's for. Because who your show is for is definitely going to be is the audience you're chasing. And then you can put yourself into their mindset. Well, what do they like? What will they focus on? And try to tailor what you're doing to them. So if you're coming up with a show that's trying to attract clients, well, then think about what your clients want, and then try to create a show that caters to that need. And that's going to take some trial and error, and it takes time. That's the last thing too. Like you're not like, especially probably the first few months you're out there, it's probably going to take a couple months to really get your momentum going. It's not something that's going to happen quickly and easily, and you have to have a plan of attack that's consistent the whole way through. Otherwise, you're not going to see the results you're going for. It's not it like you're. I mean, I'm not saying it's impossible that a million people watch one clip. You manipulate the algorithms enough, you could definitely probably find a way to do that. But will they stick around? That's a much tougher question, and that's something that takes a lot. You have to build that relationship with your audience. It doesn't happen overnight, and you can't rush that part of the process. So, but now saying all that, let's talk about ads. Do ads work? Yes. Look, fact of the matter is, like, big companies spend a good chunk of their budget in advertising, and the reason they do, like okay, Coca-Cola still puts an obscene amount of money into their advertising. Medical companies do it. Every major company advertises, and they advertise a lot because they realize the importance of keeping the brand out there. Ads can serve a function. But the big thing I will say, whether you use Facebook ads, whatever ads you do and what works for you, works for you, but whatever ads you choose to do, you have to make sure that your audience is there. Like, especially if you don't have a big budget in advertising, it's like, okay, it makes no sense to advertise on Facebook if your audience is on Twitch. It makes no sense to advertise on Twitch if your audience is on YouTube, right? Every audience is different, and I would basically caution severe research. I do some severe research on where your audience is, where are you getting the most engagement, and trying to build on one or two of those places, of those platforms you're establishing, then try to hit as many of them and all of them as possible. Be specific with your targets. So if you're a show, like, again, if you're a story show and you're a horror, go where horror people are. If you're doing stuff about video games, go where gamers are at. Look, like, there's a bit of a research component to the show, and so okay, who is going to need this? Who needs this? And who's going to invest? I say this also with one last thing. If you're an artist, the biggest thing you have to understand, if you're looking for other artists to support you, the biggest challenge you're going to have is most artists do not think like business people. And they think like artists, and a lot of artists would rather not be bothered with that kind of thing. Well, if you're one of those people, you're going to have to eat that if you want to actually make money doing this. I make revenue. Like, even now to this day, I still sell ad space on my podcast. And one of the reasons I do is my listenership is high enough, or has been high enough in the past. My numbers were just joshing. At their peak, I had 2,000 people a week listening to the show. Right this minute is a much smaller number, but it's ebbs and flows. And there's lots of things I could talk about in terms of trends and stuff like that. But I also know it tends to bounce back the more I do it. And also, if I ever go back to 3 episodes a week, like, my numbers would overnight go back right back up. Like, and I know this. I'm making some choices right now because I'm trying to figure some things out. But I've learned this a long time ago, that people, as a general rule of thumb, there's habits, and I don't know what habits work, and every show's different. Like, some shows, my biggest, most successful show came out once a week, right? It was just consistent. So I mean, it's not so with just joshing, my interview show, 3's the magic number, at least for audio. With the YouTube show, once a week was just fine, but it hit very specific audiences in very creative ways. Ads are something I recommend if you're looking for scale, but which ads, it varies, right? Target your audience. Like, if you're going to spend money on ads, one of the things I would think is figure out where your audience is coming from. YouTube's great with these kind of metrics. TikTok is good with these metrics. You find your metrics that way, and from there you formulate what specializes in those things. I also do advertising too, just saying. But that was basically it. Like, if you're looking for your audience, if you wanted to sum it up, put yourself out there on a regular basis. Focus. If you have focused content, is a huge bonus. Understand then who listens to it, cater to that audience, right, and let them and in a case like in a show like mine, guests will spread the word just as much as you do. And if you're an education show, the knowledge you offer will attract people, right? And it will attract a very specific kind of person. Identify who that is, because once you identify that, you'll be able to do what you need to do. All right, that is module 6. Module 7 is going to be, we're going to take a little break. We're going to go back to a little bit of a formula, but I want to touch on something that maybe people don't think about, and then we'll wrap this up. All right, take care, folks.